and that is to abandon the water system. It's difficult for me as an engineer to even recommend that, because as engineers we like to fix things, we might like to make things better, but through an exhaustive analysis and looking at the data, there's been several facts that have dominated our opinion for that, and I'd like to share those with you today. So the reasons to abandon the system, and again, on those other alternatives, you have that information in the reports if you wanted to look at those. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about it. There's 4 reasons, and there's a couple benefits. So the reasons: the design intent for the Bunkerville secondary system was never obtained, and I'll discuss this in the following slides. The poor water quality requires that the district blend 67% potable water to the secondary system. The reason number 3 is an overuse of water has been identified, and the definition of overuse is if you know the amount of water that's required to water, let's say, an acre of area, overuse is using more than the amount that is required. The reason number 4 is the cost value of the system is questioned, and so I'll get into depth on each one of these. The benefits to abandon the system: it eliminates the district's subsidy that's being provided in the secondary system in the form of the potable water contribution. Number 2, it transitions to a one-pipe system that's easier for maintenance, it's easier for accounting, it's easier for administration, and it's simpler to account for your loss and not account for water. You get a higher water quality, so you don't deal with the staining, the scaling in the pipes that's happened. It's better on vegetation. You will actually receive a decrease in some monthly water bills, and I'll illustrate this later on. And the last one is there's no large capital investment. So now I'm going to go over the reasons a little bit more in depth. And again, if you have questions, then please ask them. So reason number 1, the design intent was never attained. The source of water anticipated was to be obtained for the system was untreated surface water from the Virgin River, and the key word there is untreated. It's supposed to be untreated water. The actual water received requires treatment, and that comes in the form of contributing potable water to the system. You're blending 2 different water sources, which is an act of treating the water. So just to show you the sources of water that we're dealing with here, let's first look at your potable water. Great water, this is our drinking water. The TDS, total dissolved solids, which is the amount of metals and salts within the water, is very low. And just to note, this information isn't on there, but for plants, for safe watering of plants, you want that number below 450. When it becomes a moderate to slight risk, that number is 450 to 2,000. And when it's a severe risk to vegetation, it's greater than 2,000. So now let's look at your shallow well water. The TDS there is 3,800. So it's very dangerous to vegetation. And if the district used this alone, it would cause some problems, and so that's why the blend takes place. And so if you look at this number with the potable water and the 3,800 with shallow well water, we mix it at a 67% potable water and get 2,200, which is just higher than the Virgin River water quality of TDS itself. So that just illustrates that design intent just wasn't attained because of this poor shallow well water that we're pulling up out of the ground there. Do you have any comments about that?
Do we know if...
The only comment I have is, number 3, overuse of water identified. Obviously there's going to be overuse. I mean, you put a system in that has no meters, you say to people, hey, water whatever you want, however you want.
Yeah.
And, overuse is inevitable. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan, do we know if there is any, if we went deeper with the well there, would that improve the water quality, or would that, do we have any information there on that? And my next question is, as we go deeper, where do we get into our using up our
surface water versus...
Yeah. Surface water to
groundwater.
groundwater, you know, do we know where that,
100 feet to 120 feet is where the interface between Muddy Creek and the upper Alluvium Mercury Rock for somewhere right around there. So at 80 feet, that's where we're needed to be at for using surface water shares. Yeah.
so 20 feet is about all we would be able to go any further, and it's not.
Right.
So that answers our question.
Yeah, and even outside these 6 alternatives we looked at, we talked to staff about some other options to consider, but they really weren't worth pursuing into a report format, just to try and salvage the use and the value.
Well, I've been asked that question, so I just wanted to.
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we have to look at the fact that we're putting almost 70% of the good drinking water in there to even get it to where we can run it through a secondary system.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, the district's been doing that to try and protect the end users, you know. Otherwise, it would have no secondary system. But the reality of it is it's kind of a sore black thumb that's taken place. So the second portion of the design intent not being attained was the source of water that was anticipated to be sediment-free. While it is sediment-free, it's very poor quality, high in hardness, high in dissolved solids. The result is that the scaling that occurs in the tank and in the pipes, it pops off, it simulates sedimentation, and that's probably evident in the sprinklers being clogged and whatnot, the hardship that's found of the end user. So that's the end of, I'll go back, that's the end of reason number 1, that the design intent was never obtained. Is there any other questions on that before I go to reason 2?
Would you say that, I mean, obviously we didn't know till we got into it, but I mean, it's been that way, basically from the creation of the system.
My
Correct,
understanding,
correct. It has.
my understanding was the creation was through a federal grant. It was kind of, to me, a Trojan horse. We got this federal money, put the system in, and then all of a sudden, we find out, hey, maintaining the system's a lot bigger cost than putting it in ever was, so.
Well, it's one of those things, I think, too, that look of possibility of so-called free money, which turns out to be not free money, you know?
Yeah.
You know, sounds like a great idea,
But the problem, there's several problems to doing away with the system, and we don't, I guess we really don't need to talk about those now. We can wait till at the end of your presentation, then we'll get into the politics of the whole thing.
Yeah. The history of putting in the system is unique in and of itself, and the report goes through some of those items, if you've had an opportunity to read that, how it was tied to the grant, and also when the district started serving potable water to Bunkerville. That all happened at the same time. Serving that area with potable water as well as put it in a secondary system.